It's that time of year again. From West Virginia Public Broadcasting and PRX, this is Us and Them, the show where we tell stories about the things that divide us and bring us together. I'm Trey Kay. Some of our cultural traditions this time of year are centered around a bird. And we'll talk turkey today, but we'll also check on the role that food plays in our lives as comfort, tradition, and necessity. Our relationship with food has changed because of the coronavirus pandemic. We're going to explore the challenges we face, the traditions we've adopted or adapted, and we'll start with the bird.
My name is John Peterson, and I'm the third generation of my family to live and grow turkeys here on our farm in southeastern Minnesota. We have about 140 acres here. It's not all used for growing turkeys. And in the course of a calendar year, we grow about 160,000 turkeys.
John's family business is Ferndale Market. We talked at the beginning of the pandemic when there was a lot of uncertainty about food. The questions weren't just about the COVID-19 virus, but about what the future would hold for John and his customers.
We know a lot more than we did when we spoke before. The grocers and natural food stores that we sell to have given us their orders, told us what they expect to need during the Thanksgiving season. And of course, so we have a little bit of clarity on what we need. And then of course the other change is that now these are, big happy turkeys running around the farm. A lot changes, in the life of a turkey in a few months. And so it goes from being very theoretical when we last spoke to, very practical now.
What I remember last time was that you weren't exactly sure what to grow. And because of the pandemic, we were wondering whether or not were large groups of family or friends wanting to get together and have a big 25-pound turkey, or was it just maybe a few people getting together and having a smaller bird?
Most of our customers seem to make the bet that there would be smaller gatherings held. And so the positive for us was that we didn't see a decline in demand per se, but a shift from larger turkeys to smaller sized turkeys. On one hand, we know a lot more than we did a couple months ago. And on the other hand, I still think there's a great cloud of uncertainty.
So has there been any indication that customers might be backing away from turkey this year? We may get together, but I don't know, we're just not going to do turkey.
Well, I'll tell you, I'm an eternal optimist, and it's probably baked into my DNA as a third generation turkey farmer to be particularly optimistic about Thanksgiving, right? But I would say, we've talked about this a lot here, that everything we've seen thus far in the pandemic actually leads us to think that people are really craving traditions now more than ever. And of course, we're all craving time together with loved ones. And so I don't think there's any reason to believe that turkey as the centerpiece of the Thanksgiving table is going to go away.
We've been hearing for months that the pandemic has turned the food industry on its head. I asked John about how their corporate customers were doing and if any of them have come back.
No, unfortunately, that piece of our business remains incredibly soft. We typically sell about half of our finished product into retail settings and about half into food service settings. And very, very little of our food service business has started to come back. And that's a mix of colleges and schools and a lot of corporate dining. That, coupled with all the struggles that our restaurant customers are having, we feel both a tremendous amount of loss and real empathy for those folks.
The trickle-down effect with food is tremendous. So if kids aren't going to school, that means schools aren't ordering the food that they have already ordered from various farmers or other producers. That means the farmer or producer suddenly has large quantities. They need to sell, they need to repurpose, they need to repackage. So it becomes a very unwieldy and complicated process.
That's Lee Svitak-Dean.
I've been the longtime food editor at the Star Tribune, and I have run a food section for 26 years. I've written about food for 40.
Lee has stayed on top of food trends for decades. She says the pandemic presents profound challenges for people who work in our food industries. She'll help us interpret a range of topics about our relationship with food throughout this episode. Turkey farmer John Peterson says that they've had a few pleasant surprises.
Well, the brightest spot has been that a portion of that food service business that's been lost has converted into additional retail business. So everybody who previously would have grabbed a meal on the go or grabbed a meal at their workplace is now doing that at home. And then we've also seen some of the farm partners that we work with try to shift into doing more of a direct-to-consumer type model. In fact, we work with some farms that provide, vegetable CSAs and things like that, and have tried to innovate around, how could we add some meat to that mix?
John Peterson also says now people seem to care more about where their meat comes from. Temporary shortages early in the pandemic make people appreciate smaller farms like Ferndale.
I do think that there was really a consumer recognition that, gosh, our meat industry is incredibly consolidated. And I think a lot of people were struck by how much of our meat was passing through these small number of hands. So we take hope in the fact that a lot of people have told us that now more than ever, they are looking for and really making a conscious effort to seek out food that is, raised in a way that's in line with their values and raised by independent farms like ours.
Looking into the future, we don't know how long this pandemic is going to last. How are you planning for next year?
One of the challenges in agriculture is that it's hard to shift quickly. Not only does it take, 4, 5, 6 months to grow a turkey, but we have to order our poults, our baby turkeys, a year prior to be able to secure them. So we haven't made any big shifts in terms of what we're doing for 2021. Our hope is that 2020 becomes a year that we kind of, throw into the recycling bin when the year is done and assume that 2021 looks a lot more like 2019 than this year. But you're right. We don't know how quickly that normalcy might return. And, all of the food service challenges that I alluded to earlier, I don't think that people are going to be, returning to corporate work environments in the way that they did in 2019 for an awful long time. I think, that kind of disruption and the work from home models are going to be persistent for a long time.
Suppliers like Ferndale Farms are just one link in the food chain. Restaurants across the country are slammed from shutdowns and restrictions on the number of guests they can allow. Takeout orders provide some business, but one survey shows that nearly 100,000 restaurants have closed either temporarily or permanently since the pandemic began. Another report predicts that 2/3 of New York City restaurants could go out of business without additional government aid.
Many of the restaurants, particularly the ones just starting out, would be struggling if you can only have 25% or 50% of their clientele inside.
Lee Dean is food editor for the Minneapolis Star-Tribune. She says there's another factor at play. Who will head inside for a meal?
We're not entirely sure how many consumers are confident enough to go to restaurants as well, especially with some of the new ones that you see. They have an intensive takeout program that they've started, or car service, or they're boxing up cocktail mixes that people can bring home with them. I think if anything good has come out of this crazy pandemic time for restaurants, it is that there are some really ingenious ideas out there that never would have broken through in just the normal run of things. Nobody would even be thinking about them.
Lee has noticed another trend. People are making a deliberate effort to do business in their neighborhoods, and much of that is designed to save local restaurants.
They want their local businesses to make it through the pandemic. And in the sense that people use their neighborhood restaurants as a go-to for whether it's just when you don't want to cook that night, or when you want to gather with friends and neighbors, or when you just want to be in a familiar place. I think that's what drives people to their local eating and drinking places. And that people are mindful that if they don't go there, these places will be gone.
This really resonates with me. In fact, each member of our Us and Them team has been doing this same thing. Producer Samantha Gatzik introduced me to one of her neighborhood restaurants in Brooklyn, New York.
Hey, Trey. Yeah, here it is. It's Cremini's. Cremini's is run by a husband and wife team. It's next door to a friend's house, but honestly, I didn't discover it until after the pandemic hit. Since then, my husband and I have eaten there often, or we get takeout. Cremini's focuses on Italian cuisine from a specific region of Italy called La Marche. Trey met me there recently, and we talked with the owners.
I'm Riccardo.
I'm Elena. I'm in the kitchen. I'm the chef. And Riccardo uncorked the bottles.
Elena Salati was born in Piedmont, in northern Italy. Her husband, Riccardo Massetti, comes from La Marche, on the country's east coast. Back in Italy, Elena was an architect, and Riccardo worked in communications and marketing. They came to the U.S. in April of 2019 and opened their restaurant just a few months later.
Is this your first restaurant?
Yes.
Absolutely, yes.
Oh, wow. So, how many people can you seat in this restaurant when we're not in a pandemic?
We have around 38 seats, only inside. And we open also the backyard. We have also a beautiful garden. But, when you are a startup, you don't have so much money for all activities. And we open the backyard only this year.
After 1 year.
After one
Wow.
year.
But did you open that up mostly because of the pandemic, because you needed places to seat
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly.
So, in a way, the pandemic forced you to grow, or you wouldn't be able to comply.
Yes, pandemic changed everything.
Elena has self-taught culinary skills. She compares restaurant cooking to her experience as an architect. Now, instead of creating beautiful spaces, she creates beautiful dishes to serve to her customers. But COVID has changed all that.
It's a kind of adapt, yes. Yes. When you find your beautiful pasta in a plastic box, it's so sad, the pasta in a plastic box, in a wet box. But, okay, we try to do the best, obviously.
These days, it's hard to find a restaurant like Cremini's, in New York City or anywhere else. It's just Riccardo and Elena, doing it all. There are no busboys, no waitstaff, no sous chefs, no dishwashers. It's just the two of them. And thinking about that made me scared for them. What would they do if one of them got sick?
If I will have the flu or something more, we must close.
Yes.
Right.
We must close because he can't cook. I can't uncork the bottles.
You were saying that you actually know some people who've been sick, right?
Yes. We know someone have had the COVID. Absolutely. Customers that they come back after and they said, "Oh, we had. Okay,
And,
we are safe now. Okay." And we try to maintain double
Distance.
social distance. Yeah.
No, I say, okay, we are close, sorry.
I just want to say for the listener, you have like your arms like you're stiff arming the person. Yes.
No, okay, sorry, we are close.
Riccardo cleans the restaurant a lot. Every time a diner leaves, he cleans the tables, the doors, the iPad they use as a payment system. They wear gloves and masks.
We are addicted to the cleaning or pay attention to social distance, 6 feet, and we have only 3 tables here in the main room, and we clean, obviously, but 100% is impossible to have in this period.
It's obvious Ricardo and Elena are passionate about connecting with people through food. But without a busy dining room, making that connection with customers can be really tough. Elena talks about cooking as a dance, and she says some of the steps have changed.
This kind of sensation when you start to dance in the middle of the orders during the dinner makes you excited. Then this sensation disappeared, and I talk with boxes cases, not with the dishes. Oh, beautiful boxes cases. Okay, I put the pasta inside. I put cured meats, for example, together, and it wasn't easy. And also now, in the middle of pandemic, this energy was very different because we received a lot of deliveries, and this kind of energy was focused on the ring of the tablet that every time bling 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 a lot of deliveries, and this was a different energy and a different dance, but it was always an energy.
This bling bling, it was important.
Someone need us, someone need food.
Yes.
I relayed the story to food editor Lee Dean. A restaurant like Cremini's focuses on atmosphere and how their food looks on a plate. It's no surprise they struggle over the best way to deliver their food in takeout containers.
Not everything looks good in a takeout container, as well as not all food carries well from restaurant to your home. So I think that in some ways it's been an interesting change of direction for many restaurants. I don't know that many of the takeout boxes are particularly looky. Some restaurants are going to probably spend more time on that, but there's always a price to that. The more elaborate, the more expensive it's going to be, and so you have to figure out what's going to bring people back for a second or third time in a week.
Restaurants are notorious for operating on slim margins. There's not a lot of profit or room for error. Many restaurants have found some relief in the Paycheck Protection Program, or PPP loans. However, because Cremini's is such a new restaurant, it didn't qualify for those loans. Takeout business was great for them for a few months when many other Brooklyn restaurants closed temporarily. Relying on food delivery services can take up to 30% of your income, which is a lot.
The fortune is that here also the bad view is that we are only two here, me and Elena. But other restaurants have a lot of employees, and only with takeout and delivery, you can stay open.
So it's you two together, doing everything. How do you handle times when things are difficult? How do you keep from getting overwhelmed?
It's very difficult, especially in this business. Work together, stay together, be husband and wife or colleague. Friends is not easy.
But we try to separate two realities. And when you come back at home, we try to find our spaces, our relaxed time. We have a cat, so we take care about her, and that's it. But maybe as soon as possible, we must make a big vacation.
We need
when.
A week of vacation.
Do you ever feel afraid?
I felt afraid during the pandemic, absolutely, yes, because I was scared first of all, for our families and for each other to remain safe.
But we have a fire inside and
a power.
Big power, because it's not easy at our age, because we not very young, no?
You!
But
You both look young to me.
yeah, to live the past life and live your family, your friends, and I come here, the greatest city in the world, but the most competitive city in the world. And so you must have a lot of power, a lot of energy and clear idea and focus on that. And COVID, okay, we are powerful of COVID.
But you must be scared if you want to be powerful. You must be scared sometimes. And so you can have a reaction.
Some restaurants are getting by, making changes to their menu. Food editor Lee Dean says offering simpler dishes and limiting the menu helps some stay in business.
I think that everyone is looking at ways to keep that margin alive without giving up on the quality of whatever food it is that they're making. It varies to a great degree on what kind of restaurant and what kind of food they're offering, because I've seen new places that have, I would refer to it as simpler foods that there's probably more an economy to them, certainly for the restaurateur and definitely for the consumer as well. So I think that there are some entrepreneurs that are just able to modify their businesses in such a way that it makes it work for them. And certainly, I would say the businesses that will have the hardest time probably are the fine dining kind of places, which there were fewer of those, I would say, in the past few years. But I think that food is it's going to be simpler. It has to be less expensive so you can do it more often.
The restaurant industry is reeling from the economics of the pandemic. However, that lost business translates to many more meals served at home. I've talked to lots of families over the last few months, and when it comes to food, everyone handles the pandemic differently. Some home cooks are burned out making meals for their families every day. Some turn to frozen meals to help lighten the load in the kitchen, while others lean into new dishes and recipes. And then there's my friend Brian Kilpatrick from Walnut Creek, California.
Yeah, it has changed everything about how we eat.
Like many people in the early days of the pandemic, when staples like bread were hard to find, Brian and his wife made their own.
She has started making breads, and I have to say, she's amazing, absolutely amazing. I've never had anything from any bakery that comes even close to the quality that she's putting out.
And when flour and yeast were out of stock at the supermarket, they got creative.
She figured out to go directly to the mills. And we began ordering 50-pound bags and 25-pound bags. And we would order, several of different kinds of flour at the same time, and realized that buying in bulk was the thing to do.
I wanted to get Lee's take on this. She's been writing about food for more than 40 years after all. Is there truth to the notion that seemingly everyone and their mother turned to baking in 2020?
This is particularly true with baking, is that you are able to take your mind off of a disaster and focus on something else. And really, the more challenging it is, the more focus you have to apply to it. And perhaps that was the outcome. I mean, I don't know that anyone would have thought that, I have to distract myself. But that's what people were doing, I think, in many ways. And at the end of the day, the distraction tastes good.
Lee says in times like this, we want to be able to manage something, even if it's just a loaf of bread.
A need to feel like you have some control in your life, because your life is entirely out of control. If your kids are home from school, you have to work at home, you can't find groceries. It's what can I control? I can control that the loaf of bread I am making is going to feed them. And it may or may not be good, but I did it.
Brian Kilpatrick and his family control their exposure to COVID with some rigorous cleaning protocols. That includes any groceries or packages they bring into their home.
This whole thing is very stressful, and I absolutely hate having to do this or feeling that I have to do it. I found this solution that is successful. It kills it in about two to 3 minutes. And it turns out it's commonly used in restaurants, and it's inexpensive. It's not caustic or corrosive like bleach or anything like that. It's not dangerous. It's called a quaternary solution.
Brian has done extensive research on this potent disinfectant, and he sprays it on everything entering his house.
And I'll put it aside for 2 or 3 minutes. And then before we put them away, I'll rinse the quaternary solution off of them. It's usually dry by that time, but it's thoroughly clean before it goes into a cabinet or the refrigerator. Everything we do that with. Frozen food, I'll spray with quaternary solution. If we get something from the butcher, say a nice pork loin, we will spray the wrapper. And of course, that's going on the grill or in the oven.
Sure.
So as long as the outside of the package is sprayed, I'm okay with that. And then when it comes to actually cooking it, I'm very careful about how I handle it. I'll assume that there could be something on the inside of the package. So I'll open it and take the meat out and make sure the package doesn't touch anything else. And the meat goes directly on the grill or to be marinated or whatever. And then, of course, the heat will kill whatever is on it. As long as the package is sterilized, what else can you do? How far can you go? You can't be 100%.
And as far as going out to eat, well, that's completely off limits for the Kilpatricks and their 2 sons.
We're not comfortable going out any longer, so we have to cook at home. And we no longer have that treat of going out because you don't know what you're going to encounter.
After a break, we'll talk about family traditions. Some old traditions make a comeback as families search for ways to change their relationship with food. You're listening to Us and Them. This show is supported in part by the West Virginia Humanities Council and the CRC Foundation.
Music lifts us up and brings us together, even when we can't get together in person. Mountain Stage brings you live performances on the air, online, and in our podcast. They remind you how it feels to be in a live audience listening to live music. This is Larry Gross, host of Mountain Stage. Find a link to our stations and our podcast online at mountainstage.org.
Welcome back. I'm Trey Kay with Us and Them from West Virginia Public Broadcasting and PRX. We've learned a lot of things this year. One of them is self-reliance. Some bake their own bread. Others know where their meat comes from. Nicole Musgrave is a Folkways reporter for West Virginia Public Broadcasting. She knows how tradition and food are coming back together for some people in Kentucky.
Frank Martin and his family live along Turkey Creek in Langley, Kentucky. It's a town of about 1,200 people in the eastern part of the state. His house sits on the same 200 acres of land where he was raised. Frank and his sons hunt deer and turkey every year in their wooded hills. A good-sized garden soaks up sunlight down in the cleared bottomland. For generations, the Martin family raised large plots of vegetables and fruits and butchered livestock. Frank's in his 40s now, but he remembers the excitement of family traditions that centered around processing food. Each year, they would gather for hog killing day.
Us kids was able to cut meat off, run it to the kitchen. Just the fresh meat and the smell of it frying, just kind of things you just don't ever forget.
Earlier this year, Frank decided to butcher and process a hog. With his 2 sons home from school because of the coronavirus pandemic, he saw it as an opportunity to pass on skills and memories. He also wanted his boys to learn an important lesson.
I want these boys to be exposed to this. I want to teach them that this is how their grandfathers got their meat. And that's one of the things that we did this for, is to show the boys that you can be independent and self-reliant in uncertain times, especially.
The Martins started with a 225-pound hog. They slaughtered and cleaned it and did the big cuts outside. Then they moved to the kitchen and covered the island with plastic. They got out their cutting boards to do the finer knife work and package the finished cuts. Frank's youngest son, Jace, got a surprising science lesson.
I didn't realize how thick the skin of a hog was. So I was learning more about the anatomy of a hog. It's like thicker than what our skin is.
Jace's older brother, Max, says helping his dad gave him a new appreciation for how meat gets to the table.
It tastes better when you think of how much work you put into it, instead of just going to the store and buying a pork chop and frying it and eating it. It tastes better when you've done it yourself.
The Martins stocked their freezer with about 100 pounds of vacuum-sealed meat from the hog. That's enough for about 8 months of pork for the family. But it's not just pork that's in the Martin freezer.
Okay, this is some of the chicken. This is the Cornish chicken breast that we done.
There's poultry, too. Frank and his boys built a chicken coop where they raised several meat chickens. Frank jokes it was an expensive lesson.
It wasn't about, we're going to save some money on this chicken. I mean,
based on what they spent, the Martins didn't save any money. A few miles down the road in Hueysville, Kentucky, Misty Shepard says processing meat at home is a way for her family to save money, while also holding on to traditions.
It's just something we've always done. We've never thought about not doing it, but it's to feed our family, you know. It's cheaper than the stores.
Misty grew up in a family that processed much of their own food. Now in her 30s, Misty hunts wild game with her husband and young son. Every few years, the family butchers a hog or cow for meat. During the pandemic, people have had a revived interest in processing meat at home. So folks have reached out to Misty with questions. A lot of her friends have the same regret and often say the same thing.
I wish I paid attention. They remember certain parts of working up a hog or a beef or something like that, but they don't remember all the process.
But Misty does remember the process, including one of the final steps to butchering a hog, rendering the lard.
And you want to make sure that you stir it, that way it doesn't stick.
Rendering lard comes from cooking down slick, pink pieces of hog fat until they release a golden liquid. The lard turns butter-like as it cools. Misty cooks and bakes with it and uses it to make soaps and salves. The crispy brown leftover pieces of hog fat are the cracklings, which she freezes and adds to cornbread.
It's a lost art. I mean, you go to the store and you can buy processed lard out of containers, but you never see it change form. So to see something change form, it's kind of like watching a caterpillar change into a butterfly.
Now, Misty shares this artful process with others in a Facebook group.
Hey guys, it's me. Yesterday we killed a hog, so today I'm just rendering out lard on top of lard on top of lard. So it's never a dull day. Never.
Misty posts tutorials about traditional skills, like rendering lard. It's something she had more time for when she lost her job at the start of the pandemic.
I was out of work, and I had time, and I was doing this stuff anyways, and I'm like, okay, well, I can post, some of what I do, and then people like...
Misty has more than 500 members in her Facebook group, and she uses it as a way to sell the soaps and salves she makes using lard. The money she's earned has helped her pay for essentials for her young family. Misty's back at work full-time, but still takes orders for her handmade items. It's a part of her family's past and a tradition she intends to use for the future.
That was Nicole Musgrave, a Folkways reporter with West Virginia Public Broadcasting. All this talk about food has me thinking about my own family traditions. One of ours starts with apples.
Happy apple butter.
Happy apple butter.
My extended family on my mom's side has a tradition. Each fall we get together in the Blue Ridge Mountains of Virginia for a common purpose, making apple butter.
Apple butter is the best holiday of the year.
That's my sister, Stacy Kay.
This is better than Christmas?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Because everybody comes together and we are just all working together to create something that everybody gets a make and take. And there's just not the stress and pressure of other holidays.
There's a lot that goes into making apple butter. You gotta fetch the apples from the orchard, and then you gotta peel those apples. And there's this big, wide table surrounded by a dozen or more family members of different ages, from different parts of the country, and in some cases from different parts of the world.
So we're all standing around the table with our equipment. Knives, yes, and various implements of destruction.
Wait. This is a family who gets together and we're wielding knives. Sometimes that could be a dangerous thing.
We were born into this.
So far, the only injuries have been self-inflicted at the table. Every now and then, we'll start talking about family news, catching up on the events of the last year.
A 40-gallon pot sits over a large wood fire stove. Throughout the day, bushels of apples are thrown into the pot and get cooked down into a concentrate. And we all take turns stirring the pot so that things don't scorch on the side. This is my cousin, Amy Milo, stirring.
Tell me about stirring the apple butter.
It's making my arm tired right now. But if you've got a good partner, you get into the rhythm and you don't really think about it. It's a family reunion, so you see a bunch of people that you don't normally see, but there's always something to do. So if you run out of things to talk about, you can just sit there and cut apples.
So what if you're here with a family member who has a worldview or a political view different than yours? How's that work out?
You pick your battles. Because you can always talk about the apples.
What do you think would happen if more families did something like this?
There'd be a lot more apple butter in the world. And I mean, who can be upset when you have apple butter?
This is my cousin, Joe Milo.
It's a kind of a 3-day family reunion. And there again, something to do that keeps your hands occupied while you're chit-chatting with folks you see maybe once a year. And it's evolved into a very, very pleasant thing. The apple butter is somehow a glue. I don't know how it all fits, but I've come around, and I'm not the biggest,
You're not a fan of apple butter.
A pint of apple butter will do me fine for a year. I don't need to take home 22 pints of apple butter every year.
This is my conservative brother, Craig Kay.
Frankly, I think it's quite a tribute to our elders that we all descend from. They'd be quite happy to see us all gathered like this many, many, many years later.
This year, and ever since the 2016 election, really, Americans across the country have struggled to share a meal with family members who think differently. And my family hasn't really been spared from this. But I walked away from apple butter this fall thinking that if there is a secret sauce in what my family does, it's that we do more than just sit down and eat. The trick is in all that work, all the cutting and peeling and stirring, boiling it down. Work to keep your hands busy. Work where you don't have to just smile and be polite. And work toward one common goal. Some lovely jars of family-made apple butter to savor through the year.
That was a couple of years ago. This year, we didn't have our usual apple butter gathering. It happens in a small place, and it would be hard for us to do everything socially distanced. We talked about it, but we just felt that it was too risky. We were scared of getting our older relatives sick, so we called it off. Listening back on that story reminds me of just how much I appreciate those shared moments. And man, I really do miss the apple butter. Plenty of other families broke with tradition this year. That includes Julie Blackwood's family reunion. Julie's a friend of mine from West Virginia. Her family has had an annual reunion for more than 70 years. They gather near Alderson, West Virginia for her great-great-grandfather's birthday on the Sunday before Labor Day.
After he died in early 1953, they just continued that and made it a family reunion. And that's been our tradition.
Some years, low years, as Julie calls them, there would be 50 people. But other times they've had closer to 100 family members there.
And we always, before we eat, we gather in a big circle and count off.
Really?
Yeah. And then we try to capture people as they come in if they're not there for the mealtime.
Wait a minute. I want to get a picture of this. Do you get into a circle?
Yeah, as best of a circle as you can make it. You think of a lot of kindergartners trying to make a circle, but yeah, we get into a circle, join hands, and count off. And you may be next to somebody you don't really know, but you're like, they're kin, so we're fine.
I guess I'm wondering, was it harder for you just the mere fact that this long tradition there's a break in it, there's a gap in it, and that you really hadn't kept on with the consistency? Or was it the fact that these people that you've just grown accustomed to connecting with, that you're this year not connecting with them, and that you feel in a way disoriented because of it?
Yeah. Labor Day came and I was like, wow, I'm not in Alderson right now. And I feel like I should be. It really felt weird, but also the connections, missing seeing the people who I would normally see, and really feeling bad because I missed last year, thinking, I'll just go next year. Of course, nobody could have expected COVID, but yeah. And some people are getting to the point where they may not be back. In fact, a couple of cousins back in June were victims of COVID, older, in their 80s.
When you say victims who died?
They died of COVID.
The thing that we're wrapping our minds around right now, whether we're talking about family reunions, whether we're talking about Christmas, we might have to do this again next year.
Oh, I hadn't really thought about that, but yeah, you're right, because it may still not be safe at that point.
How does that feel, just thinking about that way?
I try not to think about it too much, but yeah, it's depressing when you project that far out, that this is going to be with us for a while. And yeah, until there's a vaccine, and not only that there's a vaccine, but enough people get vaccinated. So that's a little disconcerting to think that we may not be able to get together again next year. And then I guess my fear is that if you go too long without doing something, that it's almost easier not to do it. And you risk losing that tradition. Yeah. And I would hope not after 70 plus years that we wouldn't lose that so quickly. But, when it comes down to the younger generations, I remember years ago, my grandmother and her sisters would start planning their food, what they were bringing to this, like a month in advance, and talking about that. That was a big deal, big topic of conversation for quite a while. And I had joked that, when it comes down to Mom's generation, we're just going to run through KFC. Mom didn't like that too much, because we do bring stuff that's home cooked and everything. But yeah, you're getting to, as you get further and further from that main tree, it gets harder and harder to meet.
While I was working on this episode and introducing Trey to my neighborhood restaurant, I couldn't help but think about my own family traditions. Thanksgiving has always been a weird time of year for me. My family doesn't really celebrate it anymore. At some point, I started going over to my friend Lydia's house for the holidays. Now, when I say Lydia loves to cook, I mean she loves to cook. I called her recently and she launched into what she had cooking.
I have butternut, acorn, and pumpkin squashes roasting in the oven, and turkey chili cooking on the stove.
That's a pretty normal Sunday for Lydia, and I've known her for a long time. She says her love of cooking comes from her childhood. She's the oldest child in her Puerto Rican family. Both her parents worked, so she had to pitch in at an early age. By 11, Lydia was cooking and doing chores around the house to help take care of her younger siblings. Those early responsibilities just kept on going. Cooking is what Lydia does. And for the holidays, that means pasteles. Lots of pasteles. They're sort of like a tamale.
That's a Christmas thing, and I make over 200 to 300 of them a year, only once a year. There's a lot of ingredients involved. There are green bananas, green plantains, potatoes, yautía, calabaza.
Yautía is taro and calabaza is pumpkin.
And it includes cubed pork meat and chickpeas and hot chili peppers and the annetto seed oil and, some milk and the salt, the stuffed green olives, of course.
The recipe for pasteles is special and has been passed down to Lydia from her mother and grandmother.
I took it over back in 1990 when my mom had a mild heart attack, and we decided that she wasn't going to be doing that anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the tradition. And there are other recipes, but I don't have any of these recipes written down. They're all been passed down by just being in the kitchen and watching and talking and gathering information that way.
Making pasteles is labor-intensive with lots of steps. Peeling the vegetables, boiling them, grating them by hand.
And then while the meat is simmering, it's kind of like a break time. So what I do is I take out 2 or 3 bowls of that meat. It goes into the center of the table. We cut up like 2 or 3 loaves of Italian bread, and everyone just digs in to taste the meat, and so that's kind of like their lunch break.
Once break time is over, they wrap up the mixture in banana leaves and parchment paper.
On a good day, we could be done around 10 o'clock at night and the kitchen is clean and done.
Usually, Lydia and her family make their pasteles in early November. But this year with COVID, she's not really sure what's going to happen. She and her husband have medical issues and don't want to put themselves at risk having lots of people in their house. But this is something Lydia feels really strongly about.
I am in a little pickle this year because the man of the home really doesn't want to have a large amount of people in the house. And I'm going to have to fight for this because it is a tradition. I personally don't want to break my tradition because of COVID. So I think what it's going to be, instead of being a 7-person crew, it might be only a 4 or 5-person crew. And though it's just maybe 2 or 3 people difference, but that makes a huge difference. I am a little concerned, and I definitely don't want to turn this into something that it doesn't need to be. But I'm going to have to fight my battles on this one to try to convince them that, it's going to be okay to have 5 or 6 people in the house to do this.
Lydia knows she'll probably only make a fraction of the pasteles that she normally makes in a year. And that means she won't give out as many.
Unfortunately, the people that I would normally share this with and give outside of the home, I have no intentions as of right now to congregate with them or see them, in another way. My Aunt Rosa, who lives like a 15-minute walk from me, they will definitely get some. I can hook it onto her door and she'll open the door and they'll be right there. But
I've probably spent half a dozen Thanksgivings with Lydia and a house full of her family and friends.
Even at our first meal sitting, I think there's at least anywhere between 16 and 20 people there already. We're a rambunctious bunch. We love to crack jokes. We love to welcome new people in our homes. And we love hugging and kissing each other and doing shots and sharing all the baked goods.
Lydia's family holidays have changed over time. They've switched locations as family situations changed.
I used to host every holiday: Easter, Mother's Day, 4th of July, Labor Day, Thanksgiving, Christmas Eve, New Year's Eve. And at one point, my sister-in-law said, you know what? It's too much. I'm taking over Thanksgiving. And so they've been doing it ever since.
And this year is going to be very different. Lydia had to decline her brother's invitation for Thanksgiving.
And it kills me, but it's the way it's going to have to be.
Yeah.
But, we will deal with it. And it is what it is. It's like,
yeah,
we can only control but so much. This is something that is out of everyone's control. And, it'll be okay. Next year, I think next year will be better. Definitely. If not, we'll just have to, readjust ourselves again. And we just have to go on with our lives because we can't let COVID control it totally.
I love Lydia's optimism. I feel that's what we should all be doing these days. Hope for the best, and maybe next year will be different. And maybe then we can have family celebrations and spend time with people when we want. But what about this year? How are we going to get over the disappointment of having to change our traditions because of something that's completely out of our control? Lee Dean, food editor for the Minneapolis Star-Tribune, has an idea.
Maybe you can't have all these people around your table, but instead of making a meal for 2, can you make it for 4 or 6 and bring some of those efforts to the people in your neighborhood or some way to share food? Because ultimately, that sort of sense of hospitality, of sharing a meal, is so important.
And really, isn't that what holiday traditions are all about? You've been listening to Us and Them. Our team for this episode was me, Trey Kay, Samantha Gatzik, and Kate Smith. Michael Lipton and Tristam Lozow wrote and performed the Us and Them show music. Mark Lerner designed our logo. Lelena Price provides us with images for the web. Special thanks to Nicole Musgrave and the Folkways reporters at West Virginia Public Broadcasting. The marvelous people at PRX and West Virginia Public Broadcasting make Us and Them possible. So do grants from the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, the West Virginia Humanities Council, and the CRC Foundation. Us and Them was originally developed with assistance from the Mentorship Program at AIR, the Association of Independents in Radio. We'll see you next time on Us and Them.
Support for this podcast comes from the Corporation for Public Broadcasting.